And again, these companies study that, so they know that. This is the reason that it is set up that way is because of this. They understand that as human tendency, you want immediate gratification, and the gratification of you going onto the website, clicking for the room that you wanted with the ocean view and all of this other stuff, and now you get to the end. They already know that rather than you saying, I'm going to go back and just start the research again, you're just going to click on it and go on with it and pay those additional fees and not question it, right? You might just say, well, it's the cost of doing business. Listen, I have, one of my sayings, my coined phrases is you pay for convenience. And I firmly believe that. But they understand that. And the reason that they understand that because they understand present bias. Welcome back. Welcome back. This is the People's Voice. I am Trey Evans, and I am the People's Voice. Thank you again for checking out the podcast this week. As always, it is greatly appreciated. As always, we always start by taking time to thank everyone who is listening to the podcast today. We do understand that you could be utilizing your time to do something different, and so we do appreciate that you are providing us with your time today to listen to the podcast. As always, if this information is valuable and you find that this information is worth sharing, we do ask that you subscribe to the podcast. That way you'll be notified when each episode is released. We put out a new episode each and every Friday on all podcast platforms. And then we put out a video weekly on YouTube for those of you who would like to watch the podcast. But as always, we thank everyone for listening and welcome to the People's Voice podcast. So today I want to talk about drip pricing. And if you have never heard of the term, I can assure you that you have definitely experienced drip pricing. And I'm going to explain what that is and, talk about some of the features of drip pricing for those of you who may not know, and kind of talk a little bit about, some of the reasons behind it and also what's being done to address it. So today I want to talk about drip pricing. So what is drip pricing, right? And it's funny because someone who listens to the podcast, who has been listening to the podcast for quite some time, said to me, you used to do, before I used to start a podcast, I would always do definitions, or during the podcast, I would do definitions, and I got away from that a little bit, only because just some of the things don't require a fundamental definition. But I am going to give a definition today of what drip pricing is, just for those who may not know, what that is, or never heard that term before. So drip pricing, and I'm reading here from an article from NASDAQ. They quoted the Federal Trade Commission. It says, drip pricing is a technique in which firms advertise only part of a product's price and reveal other charges later as the customer goes through the buying process. Goes on to say the additional charges can be mandatory charges such as hotel resort fees or fees for optional upgrades, add-ons, et cetera, et cetera. It says drip pricing is used by many different firms, and that's one of the things that I want to talk about today. I want to talk about the companies that actually utilize drip pricing, and so we can have that discussion. So why am I talking about this, right? I always like to start there as well. So I'm talking about this because this month there is supposed to be the month that Ticketmaster, StubHub, and I can't think of the other company. This is supposed to be the month that they are supposed to display, and Live Nation, well, Live Nation is Ticketmaster, but they're supposed to display what they call all-in pricing, right? And that is that it's supposed to be that when you go to purchase a ticket, instead of seeing all of those additional fees, you're supposed to be given the fee for the actual ticket and not, all of these other fees. Matter of fact, let me play this audio clip from, USA Today. The journalist, I think his name is Joey Harrison, was talking about this, and he detailed this about the fees that are supposed to be transparent this month. So let me play that, and then we'll go from there. So yep.
Than I had been. Executives from Ticketmaster, SeatGeek, and others, they are taking the lead voluntarily to start essentially scrapping these hidden fees. So Live Nation Entertainment, which owns Ticketmaster, beginning in September, at all venues that Live Nation owns, those hidden fees are no longer going to be there, and it's going to be the total, what they call the all-in pricing listed for consumers. SeatGeek, they are going to be offering a feature on their platforms that also gives consumers that option to see the full cost up front of their tickets. And they're going to roll that out at the beginning of the summer.
So this is, again, supposed to already be in effect. So you should start to see, at least from those vendors, you should start to see all-in pricing or full pricing when you go to purchase a ticket from those sites. But that was one of the reasons I wanted to talk about this, is because I saw this, pop up, and I'm like, wow, first of all, that's a good thing, right? Let me just say that to start. But I'm like, why has it taken so long for this to happen? And, once you start to get into that discovery, right, and you start to really dig down to understand, well, why does this even occur? That's when you start to get deep into the weeds of things, and you start to gain a greater understanding, because there is a psychological component to this. Now, don't get me wrong, right? This is all about profit, and anybody who has listened to the podcast, you guys know that I am not against profit, right? I am a capitalist. I don't have a problem if you are charging money for your service or for your product. I have no issues with that. I do have an issue, though, when it hinges on the deceptive side of things, right? If you're going to charge a fee, just charge the fee. This is my fee, and if you want my service or product, you'll have to pay for it. So when I saw this story pop up, that's what kind of, made me kind of dig deep into this. So this, again, is not something new. So I don't want to make it like, if you've never heard drip pricing before, that this is like a new terminology or something like that. Drip pricing has been around for decades. And, for those who are older, you might have called it or understand it as, the old bait and switch, right? Whatever you want to call it, it does have deceptiveness attached to it, and it is for profit purposes. So, but wanted to talk about, what is exactly drip pricing. So a great example is Ticketmaster. Ticketmaster is a great example of it. For those of you who have ever purchased a ticket to anything, it doesn't even have to be a concert. I purchased tickets to take my daughter when she was younger to the circus, right? And you go in, and the ticket says $25 for the seat, and you finish clicking, and by the time you get to the end of the charges, it is no longer $25, right? You'll click on it, and for those of you who are watching the video, I've pulled up a kind of an example of it on the screen. For those of you who are listening, I should say, I pulled up an example on the screen. But You'll click on it and it'll say $25. And then it'll be $10 for the service fee. And then and that service fee is per ticket, right? So if you have a family of 4 and you've just purchased $25 a ticket for 4 people, you thinking, oh, I'm just going to pay $100. No, you're going to pay $10 on top of that. So now your $100 ticket has now just become $140 just with the service fees. And then, they might charge a facility fee, which might be another $10 per ticket. And then on top of that, an ordering processing fee, and then delivery, or it may be taxes as well, depending on, how the state handles sales tax and things of that nature. So now your $25 ticket, right, per person has gone from $25 per ticket to almost $70 per ticket. And now you're sitting there saying, oh, what the heck is this? And now you're contemplating whether or not you actually want to attend this show with your family, or should you just go by yourself? Just joking. But, in all seriousness, this is something that people have been dealing with for quite some time. And again, it's not new. Now, the thing about it is that this is not just singular to the event space, right? For those of you who have traveled before, stayed at a hotel, I mean, the list goes on, and you know what those fees look like. You can stay at a hotel and it'll tell you one fee, and then by the time you get to the actual price of the hotel fee, you have all type of other fees associated to it, resort fee and, internet fee. And you're like, well, I just wanted a room for a couple of days. Like, what's going on? But this is being addressed. But I want to talk a little bit about the psychology behind it, right? Because there's a psychology behind it. And, I've said this to, people within my network before, that none of this that we experience is by happenstance, right? This is not something that just occurs and they just randomly go, oh, let's try this. Behind these companies, there are many, many people. Sometimes they even contract psychologists and other doctors to study the behaviors of people before they design these websites and these marketing campaigns, because big money is being invested into this to ensure that they can get a return on investment. So when I was doing some research on this, I came across this article from The Conversation, and they were talking about drip pricing as well. And, they kind of delved into the psychology of it, which I thought is very important to discuss. And there are two psychological phenomenons, or two psychological forces or studies, however you want to coin it. And again, I'm not a medical professional, and, I'm not a psychologist. I'm reading the reports. But there are two that they highlighted that really reinforce in terms of drip pricing, reinforce the reaction of people to this type of pricing model. So the first thing that they talked about was a psychology term that's called present bias. And, present bias is, based on the definition that I'm reading here, it's basically when you have it's a human reaction, right? That we gravitate towards immediate reward as opposed to as opposed to avoiding cost, right? So, and I'm treading a little bit lightly here, but basically with present bias, what ends up happening is that you will spend time right? Let's say you go to check out for, let's say a hotel. I'll just use a hotel for instance. And you go online and you see that the price is, I don't know, $450 a night for the hotel room. And you're thinking, okay, $450 a night. I'm going to stay 3 nights. Okay, so that's going to be what, $1,350, something like that. And you're thinking, okay, boom, done. I'm going to hit click, get on up out of there, right? So then you secure the room, right, for the days that you want. Then it goes to the checkout page. And you go to the checkout page, and all of a sudden you see a million other fees that are associated with that one fee, right? You see all type of room fees, resort fees, water water fee, and you're like, what? So now again, your $450 a night has now jumped to about, $550, $500, let's call it, a night. But with present bias, what ends up happening is that because you've already invested the time into it, you don't want to have to now jump back out and start researching with another company or looking at other hotels, because you already want the immediate gratification of just clicking and getting and dealing away with it, right? And so, but that's a psychological phenomenon, if you will, because, and again, these companies study that, so they know that. This is the reason that it is set up that way is because of this. They understand that as human tendency, you want immediate gratification, and the gratification of you going onto the website, clicking for the room that you wanted with the ocean view and all of this other stuff, and now you get to the end. They already know that rather than you saying, I'm going to go back and just start the research again, you're just going to click on it and go on with it and pay those additional fees and not question it, right? You might just say, well, it's the cost of doing business. Listen, I have, one of my sayings, my coined phrases is you pay for convenience. And I firmly believe that. But they understand that. And the reason that they understand that, because they understand present bias. And I'm just using hotels as an example. Again, this applies to many different services and companies, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. So present bias is one of the first psychological phenomenons that actually play a role in drip pricing. The second one is called loss aversion. And, this again is a term that has been talked about for quite some time. It was first discussed in a paper, in a paper by an economist back in 1979. And it's really a term that's used a lot in economics. But once again, we're talking about business. So, this is why I'm talking about loss aversion. So loss aversion, and I'm reading here again from an article from the Conversation, and they kind of explained it here. They said, the second psychological phenomenon that drip pricing exploits is known as loss aversion. And with loss aversion, what happens is that it says we feel more pain from losing something than pleasure from gaining it. And so in this particular instance, they talk about, so an example of loss aversion in ticketing, right? Let me just give an example instead of trying to, read directly. So what would happen here is that you go on to a concert, you see that there are tickets, middle tier, right? So within your budget, concert tickets I'm talking about. You decided that you're going to, go ahead and get the concert tickets. And then once you click the tickets that you want, little thing pops up. For $25 more, you could get VIP seats. And now you go, well, man, it's just $25 more, right? I'm going, right? So you saying for $25 more, I can get VIP seats? And so you go for it. You click the VIP seats. And you go on to the next page, right? When you go to check out, and now you realize that the extra $25 you paid per seat, now you're going to pay all these additional fees with it. But how loss aversion works is that you've now don't want to deal with the loss, right? You don't want to deal with the pain. You don't want to deal with the pain of now having to come back out and click back or try to get back the middle tier seats at the lower price, right? Because you've just secured tickets, VIP tickets at $25, which you thought was going to be $25 more, but it's actually, when your total bill comes in, you're dealing with all these other fees. So now you've, in some cases increased your original budget by 20, 30%. But loss aversion, how it works is that you don't want to deal with that immediate pain of losing the opportunity and having to go back. So you go on and you click the VIP tickets at the higher price and then go from there. Now, in terms of this being addressed, this has been addressed. And, I will give credit where credit is due. This has been addressed on a state-by-state basis and also on a federal level. I just read a story that in the state of Pennsylvania, they just won a case against Choice Hotels, and basically Choice Hotels is now required to have that all-in pricing, the transparency pricing as they're calling it. So no longer can they, publish a rate on their website for their hotels. And then once you get to the checkout, you have all these additional other fees attached to it. They basically have to give you what the entire price is going to look like up front before you purchase. So, this is being addressed years, I think about maybe a decade or so ago. This has, been affected by the airline industry as well. They have to state their fees. Now, I know they have additional fees for extra bags and things of that nature, but in terms of those initial fees, those, airline facility fees and things of that nature, fuel surcharge, those have to be published when you purchase the airline ticket, so you can see what those fees are. At one time, that wasn't the case. They would show you the price of the ticket, and then you would get to the checkout, or once you purchased your ticket, however you did it, you would get all these additional fees. So the airline industry has changed a little bit in terms of showing, those fees. Now, of course, there's a million other fees that they charge you now just to fly, bag fees and seat choice and things of that nature. But those fees are transparent. But on a federal level, this has also been addressed because the Biden administration has actually, put forth an effort to force a lot of these companies to move away from drip pricing and to, get away from junk fees, as they call it. And matter of fact, one of the reasons why Ticketmaster and StubHub and those other companies are moving away from this is because the White House did address this in an earlier directive during last year. Actually, this is when the topic came up, but then it really caught steam this year. And if you go to the White House website, they have a whole list or story or report, I should say, about hotel fees and the hotel fees not the hotel fees, but the junk fees and the drip pricing, and how they've, basically called out companies to move away from it. Another place where you really see a lot of this is in food delivery. Food delivery, which again is basically, if you choose to do that, then it is a service. But in food pricing, I mean, in food delivery, the Grubhubs, the DoorDashes, things of that nature. This is where you see it a lot as well because, you'll buy, and I think they have an example here on the site here on the White House site where you'll buy from a food delivery platform, and they kind of have it here laid out. They have like an example: a cheeseburger with French fries will be $15, and then by the time you get the delivery to you, that fee can go all the way up to 20 something dollars, and that's before the tip, right? So just in delivery and service fees and taxes, you'll pay another $5, right, on a $15 cheeseburger and fries. You'll pay another $5 just in service fees, taxes, and delivery fees, and then you have to throw a tip on top of that. So, but to give credit, the White House has addressed this, and the reason why some of these companies are making changes, such as Ticketmaster, Live Nation, is because the White House did make a call out to these companies for their practices. But in terms of what can you do as consumers, one of the things that you can do is, first of all, you definitely want to question those fees, right? If those fees come up, you always have the option of not having to utilize that service, especially when you're talking about hotels and you're talking about hotels. You see this a lot in cell phone services. You see a lot of this in delivery services. You can choose to use a different delivery service, or oftentimes, as I do, I am a person who goes and picks up my food still. Yes, I still pick up my food in 2023. So that's definitely a way to avoid that. But again, it's really about education. It's really about educating yourself to the issue and being aware before you click those final numbers, making sure that the fees that you are being assessed are, you're agreeing upon those fees, and that, those are fees that need to be charged, because again, this is a revenue source for these companies. So this is not just to cover their cost. This is cost plus profit. So just keep that in mind when you utilize those services. But that's what I wanted to talk about today. Just wanted to talk about drip pricing, kind of get the word out, get people's eyes and ears aware to what's going on out there. And, once you come across that, be aware and notify and, let your family, your network, and your community know about this as well. As always, if you would like to leave a comment, you can definitely leave a comment and reach me on any social media platform. I am Trey Evans on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can also reach me at the People's Voice Podcast on Instagram, and Trey Evans on LinkedIn if you would like to leave a comment or contact me about anything that you've heard on the podcast today. So, as always, dreams are not just for sleeping. Please wake up and live your dreams. My name is Trey Evans, the People's Voice. Tell somebody about the dream. Salute.